Hello and welcome to this special episode of Africa Matters from Rwanda's capital, Kigali. I am Adesewa Josh. Nearly 3 decades on, Rwandans remember the darkest period in their history. In just 100 days, more than 1 million people were killed in 1994 during the genocide against Tutsis. It began on April 7th, and this year's commemoration events will continue for 100 days. People are encouraged to remember their loved ones, unite and renew their commitment, and to ensure this doesn't happen again. And this is what President Paul Kagame had to say about this year's Genocide Remembrance Ceremony.
It's very clear that the wounds are still deep. But Rwandans, I thank all of you for refusing to be defined by this tragic history. And people have managed to turn the page and move forward from grieving, from crying, and people have decided to live on. And even people have been ready, have been willing to do the most difficult thing, one or the other. They have decided to forgive. Well, but we can't forget. We must fight revisionist ideologies because they are easily passed on from generation to generation. We must fight denial because that is how history repeats itself. Rwanda's youth are privileged to have a country to call home, and which embraces everyone, all of them. We need to encourage young Rwandans to learn about our past so that they can lead with historical clarity, but also with a sense of responsibility and accountability. I spoke to some Rwandans trying to prevent it from ever happening again. We drove nearly 4 hours to meet Patrick Nsabimana in Mbazi district, Huye, one of several villages in Rwanda where victims and perpetrators of genocide live together. Patrick was born into a Hutu family in 1997. Growing up, he had no idea his father was involved in the genocide until the age of 13, when he discovered he had been jailed for killing his Tutsi neighbors.
My father was one of the people who committed genocide in 1994. He still feels guilty about what he did. But even though our parents committed genocide under the former regime, as young people born after the tragedy, we are very sure that the genocide will never happen again because we are here to fight any ideology that promotes genocide.
So have you forgiven your father?
I've forgiven him because I came to know that what he did was from the bad ideology, from the bad government.
Rwandan authorities say Huye was one of the last districts in the southern region to be liberated from genocidal forces. At the end of the civil war, the government embarked on an ambitious justice and reconciliation project across all Rwanda's 30 districts.
to help Rwandans, regardless of ethnicity, embrace peace.
What we do is to organize them into small groups of victims and perpetrators. The perpetrators talk about what they did, and the victims share their experiences. By telling the truth, there is ground for understanding and reconciliation.
Even after so many years, not all survivors feel comfortable talking about what happened. Historian Innocent Nizeyimana says it's because many of them are still traumatized by the tragedy.
It's a personal journey. Some of them are able now to talk about what happened through their childhood up to genocide against the Tutsi. Others are not yet able to talk about it. So what we are doing as Aegis Trust to help them is teaching younger generation. Teaching young generation through peace education program. We talk about this history that their parents are not able to tell them. Then we also help them to visit memorials. That's why genocide memorials have been established. It is a proof, a tangible proof to show that genocide happened. And inside those memorials, history that led to genocide is well explained. So when we have intergeneration debates between young generation and the adult people, you see that they come up with the conclusion that genocide will never happen again.
As Rwanda marks 29 years since the genocide, many young people look to a future free of ethnic rivalry and to choose one another no matter what.
And joining me now is Ngabo Brave Olivia. He's an international expert on genocide prevention. I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
How would you describe Rwanda's progress nearly 3 decades since the genocide?
Thank you very much. I would say that our country has really doing a long and a good journey after the genocide against the Tutsi. Some atrocity that we had really that happened for 100 days that took more than 1 million of our people. It's a big tragedy that we had in the century, in 21st century. I would say that our country has done very much great in terms of unity and reconciliation, in terms of the country development itself, as you can see by yourself, but also in terms of really becoming as one Rwandan rather than having divisionism.
In 2003, Rwandan government adopted the non-ethnic recognition, meaning no Hutus, no Tutsis, just Rwandans. Would you say that has had any impact on ethnic rivalry in your country?
A very actually big and positive impact, because we as Rwandans had to understand that even way before the colonizers, when they came and they decided to bring the ethnicity and make it a political tool for divide and rule. But again, when you go back to our root history, you find that we do not have such like ethnicity, because how would you say that we have ethnicity yet we speak the same language, have the very same culture, we eat the same food? So there was nothing such like that. So I would say that the Rwandan government and the Rwandan people decided to become as one Rwandans as it was way before. And yes, this is really have been showing us a very positive impact. We had to understand that we are all one rather than having divisionism that brought to us what we have been through during the genocide against the Tutsi.
You know, what happened in Rwanda, there are many African countries who also experience similar ethnic triggered, or shall I say related violence. What would you say is the underlying causes of that, and how would you say or recommend to Africans and even African leaders to deal with such ethnic motivated violence?
Thank you very much for that question. Actually, we have been having it with our fellow brothers and sisters Africans, as you said. And then I believe that what we need to come up and understand, and it's that we are all Africans. We are all Nigerians, Rwandans, Southern Sudanese, but we are one people rather than having divisionism that also bringing the hatred speeches that are bringing the killing of people. So I would say that what I would recommend, as you say, wherever in part of Africa they are facing such hatred speeches, I can give an example of Eastern DRC Congo, where our fellow brothers are just being killed just because of the way they look. This is really not something to go for. Rwanda faced the genocide against the Tutsi, and we are here to serve as a lesson to the whole humanity so that the genocide really never happens again elsewhere, not only in Africa, but also elsewhere. So what I can recommend is that people should understand that we are all human beings and need to live together.
That's interesting. That's a very brilliant point you've made. What would you say is the best approach to ethnic conflict reconciliation in Africa? And are there countries succeeding at it? I think I'm asking an obvious question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, starting from our own, what we had to look within our homegrown solutions that are sitting together, talking, and sort out our issues. The dialogues, they are the very key to find the peace, to find the reconciliation. Because when people sit together, they go to the root cause of what made whatever they faced happened. So when people really open to sit together, have conversation, a clear conversation, the uncomfortable one, but with the aim of becoming one at the end. So I would really recommend the sitting together, the having the dialogues, looking for our own cultures as Africans, because I believe that we used to have different ways of sorting the issues. I would recommend the dialogues of that, according to what we have been at least seen working in this country, talking and sort out the issues by ourselves.
Finally, I would like to ask you, what would you say to people who find it or who are finding it very difficult to let go of the past? Because you cannot force people to forgive.
Yeah, sure.
You can't force a victim to forgive its perpetrator or whoever inflicted violence on them.
Yeah.
What can such people do to keep moving on?
That's an interesting question that you're asking me, because talking about for the psychological part of it, we're talking about the traumatic events that we've been through. You do not force anybody to forgive, but there's the first step, at least that we do, that is called awareness, to know what happened to us, to know what we've been through. And this is reason why our country, we are remembering the genocide against the Tutsi, because we need to bring back that awareness of where we have been through. Again, after the awareness, there's acceptance, accepting that whatever happened, we cannot bring back the story. But again, also having this moving step forward to say, even though I have been through this, whatever traumatic event that you've been facing, what is my future? How do I want it to look like? So the awareness of what happened to you, the acceptance of that we cannot turn the clock backwards, and also the moving forward decision. We need to understand that as a collective human responsibility or collective human consciousness, so that we really accept whatever happened to us. We learn our lessons, that we really, these things happen because of A, B, C, D, but again, we are deciding to move forward and to take a step.
Ngabo Brave Olivia, an international genocide prevention expert, thank you so much for speaking to Africa Matters.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a great pleasure to always share whatever we have. Thank you very much.
And now we head to Zimbabwe, where once wealthy commercial farmers are battling poverty as they wait for more than $3 billion in compensation from the government, nearly 3 years after it was promised. Columbus Mavunga reports from Harare.
Bezo Brand is just one of around 4,000 white farmers who were forced off their land by the government in the early 2000s. The 76-year-old now lives in a rented cottage in the capital Harare and has been diagnosed with lung cancer. He says he can't wait much longer for the compensation he is owed.
It's just such a boost to me, you know. Even though they're my kids, you don't want to burden them, and friends and relatives and family, you know. And yeah, huge. We've been waiting for 20-something years in anticipation, and yeah, nothing's happened.
Meanwhile, Carrie Lynn Kay has been trying to get help for friends and colleagues in a similar situation. She says the average age of the farmers waiting for financial compensation is 82 years.
Many of their children left and went say children, adult children, left and went overseas, a lot to Australia, some New Zealand. So although they've been able to help their aged parents, it hasn't been easy. And for those that haven't got people that can assist them, have to rely on charity, which is very hard when you've run your own business, you've owned your own farm.
The Commercial Farmers Union, the body that represents the farmers in negotiations with the government for compensation, wasn't available for comment amid allegations it's now sided with the government in this process. Prince Kuipa says it's important that the government settles these claims quickly.
So when you try to sell your commodities to export them, sometimes, not always, you might find that it's not so easy because they would want the land issue to be resolved first, and therefore you are cleared, and then you can market your products. So it affects even the farmers who benefited from the land reform.
The government says it wants to close the chapter as soon as it raises the necessary funds through taxes or bonds.
It's a large sum, so it's not going to happen overnight. They understand that, they know, and we also internally are trying to come up with different methods of revenue so that we can compensate them in the shortest amount of time. And as soon as we get that money, we will very gladly pass it on to the former farm owners. But it's something that we are trying to expedite as much as we can.
The government says once these compensation cases are closed, it wants to refocus on Zimbabwe being the breadbasket of the region. Columbus Mafunga, Africa Matters, Harare.
In Burkina Faso, religious violence is escalating in some communities, but an interfaith group is trying to build cohesion between Muslims and Christians in the capital, Ouagadougou. Claire Harriott tells us more, but first I'd like to warn our viewers that this report contains disturbing images.
The evening call to prayer during Ramadan announces the end of the day's fast and the beginning of the iftar meal. In Ouagadougou, two friends, one Muslim and the other Catholic, have organised an interfaith iftar.
We first noticed that religious cohesion is the most important thing. Why? Because if two groups from different religions manage to live together, many evils in society will be completely finished.
If we don't commit ourselves to making this country a country of dreams, a country where life is good, we'll be the biggest losers.
For 7 years, Burkina Faso has been racked by violence linked to Daesh and Al-Qaeda, groups that have exploited ethnic and religious divisions. Then a week ago, a video emerged showing the bodies of young boys with about a dozen men, many in military fatigues, standing by. The military denies any involvement in the children's deaths. But French publications Le Monde and Libération reported the killings happened inside this military base. In response, the junta ordered 2 French journalists to leave within 24 hours. Their expulsion is just the latest breakdown in relations with France. In September, the military seized power in Burkina Faso's second successive coup. A month later, during a protest, the French embassy in Ouagadougou went on fire.
We demand France get out. Leave us in peace.
Peace is something that's likely to elude Burkina Faso for some time, with dozens of civilians and soldiers being killed every week. That means it's up to community groups to try to promote tolerance during the holiest period for Christians and Muslims alike. Claire Harriott, Africa Matters.
In the midst of rising violence from armed groups in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, artists are using the streets of Goma as their canvas to call for peace and unity. Elias Avci reports.
Congolese painter Thierry Croco wants his country to be united through peace. So he's using his art to send a message to a nation plagued by violence.
As you can see, this art is like phones alerting us that a lot of blood has been shed. As an artist, I have collected phone cards and other tools to send a message. This is a heart that distributes blood into the body. It shows a connection and sends a message to people to be united, to live together, and to avoid discrimination, because we are all the same.
But his paintings are not without risk. Kroko has been targeted by strangers who broke into his home and threatened him with a knife multiple times. All because his paintings promote peaceful coexistence among the country's different ethnic groups. The Council of Foreign Relations says more than 100 armed groups operate in the region, terrorizing communities and controlling weakly governed areas, despite the presence of over 16,000 UN peacekeepers.
The armed group M23 has been at war with us in the Congo for over 10 years. So we, as artists, wanted to send a message that our country needs peace. We don't want war every day. War is holding back development.
The hope is that this art will bring attention to the situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and inspire people to unite and reject violence. Ilyas Avcı, Africa Matters.
And now for our city profile of the week, we take you to Ibadan, a city in southwest Nigeria. It's the country's largest city by landmass and the second fastest growing on the continent. Take a look. And that's our show this week. Please share your thoughts and suggestions about the stories you've seen on this episode or ideas on what you would like us to cover on Twitter using the hashtag #AfricaMatters. Please feel free to reach out to me on my personal handle @Adesewa Josh. You can watch this episode and more on YouTube. Just search Africa Matters TRT World. Like, comment, and share. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next week.